Hi friends, I would like to welcome you all for today's lesson. Today we are looking at immunology in microbiology. Pay attention in order for you to understand this topic to the full capacity. It is very essential for you to understand this as medical students so that you can be able to see how the body can actually defend itself from invasion of microorganisms that are pathogenic in nature. So every day we come across number of microorganisms that actually are pathogenic in nature, like bacteria and the viruses. Nevertheless, you find that still the body will be able to continue functioning properly without constantly being sick. What aids this is actually the function of the immune system. So we are saying that it's because the human body requires more layered immune system to keep it running smoothly. So this immune system actually keeps the body for it to continue running smoothly and play its function regardless of having faced with a number of microorganisms that are pathogenic in nature. Having seen all that, what is this immune system in this case? Immune system, it is said to be the biological structures and processes within an organism that protects against the disease by identifying and killing pathogens and tumor cells. Bear in mind that when you're talking about immune system, first thing you are dealing with the biological structures. Secondly, you are talking about these biological structures being able to protect the body against the disease by identifying and killing pathogens. So here, take note of identifying and killing pathogens. So in this case, we are saying that for this immune system that has the responsibility of identifying and killing the disease of disease-causing agents, for it to function properly, it has to be able to detect and also to differentiate those microorganisms from the cells of the body. Foreign invaders, in this case, it can be in form of an antigen, just a protein in nature, or it can be in form of a microorganism. By the immune system, it has to be able to detect the presence of these foreign invaders. When it detects it, it has to be able to distinguish it from the cells or from the proteins of that of the body, so as to be able for it to kill this antigen or foreign body that can be introduced within the body or the cells. So in this case, what is it that this immune system comprises of? First thing, what you need to understand is that this immune system, it is comprised of the leukocytes, which are actually white blood cells. And these white blood cells, they are actually mobile units of the body's protective system because it actually circulates within the blood system. Remember, in anatomy and physiology, when we're looking at the composition of the blood, we talked about the leukocytes as being one of the cellular composition. So it actually plays the function in the fighting against infection. So it acts as a protective system within the circulatory system. Sorry for that. The other essential cells that are essential in the fighting against foreign invaders, in this case the part of the immune system, we've got also the macrophages, which are actually the monocytes that migrates into the tissues so as to ensure that inside the tissue also the environment is conducive for the cell growth and development, and also to prevent the presence of the microorganisms that may be infectious in nature. Another cells that are actually essential in the immune system, that the neutrophils, which plays the major role in the phagocytosis, which is in fighting against the bacterial infections. We also have the lymphocytes that can be divided into B and T lymphocytes. T cells in this case are essential for cellular mediated immunity, which deals with the cells in the fighting against the foreign invaders. And B cells, they are actually essential for humoral immunity, which is essential to fight against the foreign invaders by using the antibodies within the plasma proteins. and also have the natural killer cells, which actually plays the functions they're fighting against the viruses and also the tumors. And we have the monocytes, just like we have mentioned in our preamble, which is actually going to differentiate into the macrophages as it enters the tissues and the mast cells within the circulatory system. And also the functions of these, they place the function in the inflammatory reaction. And we are saying inflammation in this case, inflammatory reaction, we're just talking about the response that the body is going to produce in an instance when faced with an injury or an infection. And we also have the eosinophils that actually plays the function in the parasitic infection and allergics, and also basophils that actually plays the function like that of the neutrophils in fighting against the foreign invaders or in phagocytosis. Having seen all that, would like to now get into details talking about the immunity as being the biological structures that protects the body against the foreign invaders. So in this case, the immunity, it is in two types. We've got what we call adaptive immune system and also what we call innate immune system. This adaptive immune system, it is in two types. Having said that, adaptive in this case is just an acquired immunity. It can be acquired naturally or artificially. And both natural and artificial immunity, it has the passive and active part. And we're going to understand all this, what it means. So when we say adaptive immunity, we are just talking about an acquired immunity, the defense mechanism that is going to be acquired from an external environment, so to say. And when we say innate immunity, this is the immunity that actually is naturally based, or rather is an immunity that each and every individual has. And we are going to talk about the types of innate immune system, and or rather what makes up the innate immune system, in order for you to understand better on this one. So we're saying, just like that chart we have seen, we've got innate immune system and the adaptive immunity. So innate immune system can also be said to be non-specific or inherent immune system, because it does not choose what disease to fight against for, or what microorganism, what antigen, what foreign invaders to fight against for. And also adaptive immunity can be said to be specific, because it only chooses, or any type of the cells that are involved in adaptive immune system, they've got a specific type of antigens, or rather foreign invaders, to which they can react to, hence said to be specific. Straight away, let's talk about innate immune system. Innate immune system, in this case, we are saying that it results from general processes rather than processes that are directed at specific disease or organisms. What we are saying in this case, it is actually a general process that can respond to each and every foreign invaders that can be detected by the body, and it is not only directed to specific disease, but each and every disease this innate immune system, it is going to react to it. Why is it like that? Let's talk about the composition. We're saying that this innate immune system, it includes the skin, hydrochloric acid, also digestive enzymes, the phagocytic cells, and the leukocytes, also macrophages. In what sense? Let's see on the next slide. Let's see the basis of innate immune system. Having said all those, the skin we've talked about falls under the physical barrier. So when they ask you about the basic or the basics of the innate immune system, it is actually this that we are now to talk about. The first one, it is the physical barrier. Physical barrier includes the factors like the skin. The skin actually acts as a barrier to prevent microorganisms from them being introduced inside the body. We also have gastrointestinal tract, which actually have the mucous membrane, which secretes the mucus, and this mucus plays the function in the trapping of microorganisms that can be inhaled or exhaled, or rather swallowed together with the food particles. And also in this GIT, part of the GIT is the stomach, where there is a production of hydrochloric acid, and the function of hydrochloric acid, it is actually to kill the bacteria that can be swallowed together with the food as you are eating, hence protecting the body from the disease. Also have nasopharynx. In the nasopharynx, as we were talking about the respiratory tract the previous time, we noticed that actually this nasopharynx, it has the secretion of mucus and also the ciliated cells that actually plays the function in detecting or trapping or sweeping the foreign bodies like the dust particles and the microorganisms that can be held together with the air as you are breathing in, so as to prevent the vital organs from the invasion of these foreign bodies. Also have eyelashes. Eyelashes, like they prevent or protect the eyes from becoming invaded with microorganisms and dust particles, and also it sweeps those that can be introduced within the eyes. And also have the body hairs, which plays the same function. Another basis is the biochemicals. These biochemicals include the secretions like mucus. We've talked about the bile, which is secretion from the liver into the intestines, plays the functions, the digestive system, like gastric acid in the stomach that actually kills the bacteria, the saliva within the mouth, the tears in the eyes, and the sweats that can be produced in the body so as to destroy the microorganisms. So all these biochemicals, they are essential in fighting against microorganisms that are causative of disease in nature. Not only that, another basic, it is the general immune response. When we talk about the general immune response, in this case, we are talking about inflammatory response that are going to be produced by the body in an instance whereby it is faced with the infection or an injury. And remember, we're talking about the innate immune system. So innate immune system does not only respond to infections, but also to injuries. That's why we're saying that response such as the inflammation. And when you're talking about the complements in this case, there are substances like the proteins that can actually respond to antigens. Remember, the plasma proteins, we've got the antibodies that are essential to fight against the antigens that can be produced. So it is the part of the innate immune system, and hence said to be the non-specific cellular responses. And when talking about non-specific cellular responses, in this case, we're talking about the cells that are actually essential in playing the function of phagocytosis, like the neutrophils, basophils, eosinophils, monocytes, those that we've talked about, that are essential to fight against the infections. They do not choose which bacteria, which virus, which antigen to react or to respond to, but actually it is a general process that responds whenever there's a foreign invaders that has been introduced within the body. So we're saying that actually the inflammatory response actively brings immune cells to the site of an infection by increasing the blood flow to the area that has been affected so as to enhance the phagocytosis to take place. And the complement is an immune response that marks the pathogens for the instructions, and also sometimes they may form the holes of the cell membrane of the pathogen. Remember, the cell membrane of the pathogen is actually just the structure of the pathogen that is essential for maintaining the cell integrity. Hence, when this cell membrane has been interfered in terms of its composition, it is also going to stop producing the cellular composition of the cell wall, making the bacteria to become more susceptible to destruction, or it can also undergo lysis due to failure of withstanding the osmolality pressure due to the destruction of the cell membrane. So all these functions are actually managed by the innate immune system. The features of the innate immune system that you need to understand includes 1. Innate immune system does not keep memory after being invaded with the disease. So it does not keep the memory in that when the person has been infected, for example, I'll give an example of measles. When a person has been infected by measles, it is not going to keep a memory of that measles in that to protect you for the next invasion. Secondly, this innate immune system have an ability to respond quickly in an instance of an infection. Remember, we talked about those cells of the innate immune system like the neutrophils. They are actually essential, whereby immediately when the infection has been introduced within the body is going to react to that. Even fever is going to result due to the antigen-antibody reaction that is going to be produced by this innate immune system. And we said it can also respond to injuries. For example, if at all there's a cut that has occurred, the body, through the inflammatory agents and substances like coagulants, are going to be brought forth to the site of an injury, and also as to protect the body against that. So that's why we're saying that it actually responds quickly. Thirdly, Innate immune system, it is not specific. It doesn't choose which antigens to react to. Fourthly, it is always available. Remember, we gave an example like the skin and the leukocytes, which are the blood composition. These structures are always there. From the time the person is born, this innate immune system will always be there, unlike it is with the adaptive immune system. So these features are going to help you to differentiate innate immune system from that of an adaptive immune system. And another point is that innate immune system are also important in activating the adaptive immunity. That's why mostly this innate immune system is said to be the first line data or the first line defense mechanism. Why is it like that? Because it is actually the one that responds immediately and just at an onset of an injury or an infection, and so to stimulate the adaptive immune system to take part in the fighting against the foreign invaders. So that's about the innate immune system as being one type of immunity. The next type, it is an adaptive immune system. So what is this adaptive immune system? It is also said to be specific immune system because it just reacts to the specific type of an antigen, or it can be said to be an acquired because it is not always available, but is something that can only be acquired after an exposure to the antigens or an antibody that is essential and responsible to fight against that specific antigen or foreign body. Let's see. We're saying that mostly our body having this specific immunity. In what sense? We've got two types of adaptive immune system. The first one, it is natural acquired. The second one, it is the artificial acquired. So when you say a natural acquired, this is a type of immunity that a person is going to acquire through one generation to another, and it can be given through the genes, mother to child immunity, or it can be as a result of having one suffer from the disease. For example, like measles we've talked about, when the person is actually been infected by measles and it has been treated, the body is going to keep the memory to that measles, in that next time this person cannot suffer from measles again. The immunity which is responsible for that is actually the adaptive immune system. So now what we are saying, when the person has been sick, or so when these antigens and antibodies have been gotten from the mother to child through natural means, it is said to be natural acquired immunity. So now what is this natural acquired immunity? It can said to be active and passive, just like we mentioned earlier. So when you're talking about active natural acquired immunity, you are talking about the immunity where the antibodies are going to be produced by the body or the person himself or herself. In what sense? Where the antigens have been introduced within the body. So you find that this antigen can be in form of a bacteria or a virus which is going to infect the human. So when I'm infected, or when an individual is infected by measles, like we have already mentioned, the measles is going to stand as an antigen to the body, and the body is going to produce antibodies to fight against that measles, and that is going to make it immune to measles, and that's what we call active immunity. So active immunity are antigens that are going to be introduced to the body, but through the natural means. Then when you say passive, in this case, there are the antibodies that are going to be produced from somewhere else and being given to the person. For example, if it's from the mother, through breastfeeding, the baby is going to suck the antibodies that are essential to fight against one disease. So when there are the antigens that have been introduced, or rather the antibodies that have been introduced to this body, that is going to be passive. So the only difference between passive and active is that active are antigens that are going to be produced and the body is going to make antibodies. But when you're talking about passive, they are already made antibodies that are going to be given to an individual. We move on. What are the features of adaptive immune system? The features of adaptive immune system, the first one, it is specific to the specific foreign substance. If at all one is immune to measles, when typhoid fever comes, the body's those cells that are special for measles are not going to react to typhoid. That's why you're saying they're specific to specific foreign substances. Secondly, it keeps memory from an exposure to that antigens, just like we have already mentioned. So if at all one has been infected by measles, it will keep that memory in that when this antigen or the bacteria or rather the causative agent of measles when it comes to the body will already have the memory of that kind of the disease. Hence, the body is going to react to it and manage that so that it cannot be diseased. Thirdly, it is not always available. Just like we have talked about, it is only when the person comes in contact or infected by that disease will that person have an immune system against that disease. So it is not always available, and it is a second line of defense in presence of an antigen. We have seen under innate immune system as being the first line defense mechanism. So it actually activates the adaptive. So adaptive is the second line of defense mechanism. And another point is that it may last after a prolonged period of time. This adaptive immune system is not always can it last forever. For example, it could be the antigens or other antibodies have been given through a vaccine. And I guess you at once heard was being said that this vaccine, it is active maybe for 10 years. When it is over 10 years, you need to have another vaccine, or it will be said that it will stop working. So that's why we're saying it doesn't last for a long period of time. Quite alright. We talked about those points on adaptive immune system, and now let's talk about the natural active acquired immunity. Quite right, we've talked about natural immunity, and we mentioned points on the natural immunity on being active and passive. So now in details, when you're talking about the active acquired immunity, we're saying that this is the type of the immunity which is acquired in response to the entry of a live pathogen into the body. That's why it is active. So it is going to be acquired when the pathogen has been introduced in the body, and the body itself, it is going to produce the antibodies against that pathogen. And examples that are given in this case for the typhoid fever, the measles or smallpox, when it is introduced in the body is going to make the antibody. So in this case, it is in natural acquired. And now the natural passive acquired immunity. We're done with the natural active, but now it's natural active. Passive. So in this case, the antibodies is going to be obtained by the young from the mother, either across the placenta or in breast milk, just like we have already mentioned. So we are saying that the human placenta allows maternal antibody to pass into the fetal circulation. So the baby can able to get the antibodies from the mother that are essential actually in fighting against the specific diseases. So the baby is then born with these antibodies, but after some times you find that these antibodies that have been gotten from the body can actually go away, because we've said under the features that it does not last for a long period of time. So sometimes they are going to be present actually after birth, just after birth, but sometimes or after a few months they are going to disappear. So we are saying that these antibodies, not only that can be gotten through the fetal circulation, rather transplacental, but also can be taken through breast milk as the person or the baby is sucking milk from the mother, hence said to be natural passive required. Then apart from natural, we can now talk about artificial. So remember, under natural we talk about the passive and active. Now let's talk about natural. Artificial. Under artificial acquired immunity, we also have active and passive artificial acquired immunity. And the mechanism in terms of active and passive, it is just the same with that one we talked about in under natural. Just what makes the difference is that this one, it is used with the artificial means, unlike it is with natural. So we are saying that according to whether the person actively participates by making his own antibodies, which can be active, or only passively received antibodies, presents in therapeutic cilia. What we are saying, the artificial, it can be given through artificial means or mechanical means. For example, like a vaccine. You are going to be given a vaccine. That vaccine is to protect you against a specific disease. So in this vaccine, if at all it contains the antigens that when it is given to your body, you are going to produce antibodies, it will be said to be an active artificial acquired immunity. But if at all that vaccines contains the antibodies that you need to use to fight against the disease, it is going to be said as being the artificial passive acquired immunity. So you are saying that artificial passive acquired immunity in here, the antibody is obtained or protection is derived from an infection serum of prepared or ready-made antibodies. So they are already made antibodies that you are going to be given, and when that happens, it will be said to be the passive one. But if antigens that you are going to be given, it is going to be said to be active one. Like in diphtheria, it's in diphtheria vaccines, the tetanus vaccine and gas gangrene, they are artificial passive acquired immunity, whereby you are given the already made the antibodies. So here we've got the visual aid that is actually describing what we have been talking about in order to make us fully understand the points. So we've got adaptive immune system there on top. So adaptive immune system, just like we have said, it is actually in two. There's natural acquired and artificial acquired. So when you're talking about natural acquired, we've got active and passive. And under active, we're talking about natural active. We're talking about antigens that are going to enter into the body through natural processes. And the passive one, they are antibodies that actually are going to be introduced within the body through natural means, but they are already made antibodies. So active antigens, passive antibodies. When you come to the artificially acquired to the right hand side here, we can see the active and passive one. Again, when talking about active, you are dealing with antigens that are going to be introduced within the body, maybe from the vaccine that you can be given, and your body is now the one that is going to make the antibodies essential to fight against the disease. Then when you're talking about the passive one, it is actually the preformed antibodies in immune serum that can also be given through injection as in form of the vaccine. So active, it was about antigens. Passive, always about antibodies. Thank you. I guess you get the meaning of this type of immunity. So under adaptive immune system, we've got two types again. Regardless of it being natural and artificial, we've got two mechanisms. In this case, we are talking about mechanisms of immunity, unlike types of adaptive immunity, but two types of mechanism of adaptive immune system, which can either be humoral immunity or cellular immunity. So now we are going to start talking about humoral immunity. I call for your particular attention on this one again. When you're talking about humoral immunity in this case, this is the type of immunity that is going to be dealing with the antibodies. And we are saying that it is sometimes said to be antibody-mediated immunity. Why is it like that? We talked about the T cells. These T cells, as they are developing, they are going to divide, or rather the lymphocytes are going to divide into two during the developmental stages. In the thymus, there will be T cells. In the bone cells, there will be the B lymphocytes that will be developing. So now, in this case, humoral immunity, we are much concerned with the B lymphocytes that actually are going to differentiate into plasma B cells, which are going to be producing the antibodies within the plasma. That's why you're saying that the plasma, when they ask you what is plasma in this case, you are going to talk about plasma as being the fluid part of the blood containing the antibodies. What are these antibodies? Coming from the B cells. So we're saying that the humoral immune system deals with the antigens from pathogens that are freely circulating or outside the infected cells. Having been that humoral immune system deals with the antibodies, their functions is to fight against the pathogens and antigens that are actually outside the cell. Get that point? Outside the infected cells. And the antibodies produced by the B cells will bind to these antigens, neutralizing them and causing lysis. Lysis in this case is just the cell destruction of the foreign invaders, or phagocytosis is going to happen, where by the engulfing and the killing and neutralizing of the pathogens is going to happen. So in this case, humoral immunity deals with the B cells, B lymphocytes, which actually produces the antibodies within the blood plasma, and also essential to fight against the antigens and the pathogens that are going to be found extracellularly or outside the infected cells. What about the cellular immunity? Cellular immunity in this case, it occurs inside infected cell and mediated by T cell lymphocytes. So the difference is that B lymphocytes works outside the cell, T lymphocytes inside the cells. And cellular said to be cellular immunity. Why is it said cellular immunity? Because it deals with the function of the cells, not antibodies, but the cells, like those neutrophils we were talking about. So the T cells, T lymphocyte, it is actually going to activate the cells that are essential in fighting against the diseases in order to combat the presence of antigens, or rather microorganisms that are pathogenic in nature, that are inside the cells. So we're saying that the helper T cells releases the cytokines that help activated T cells to bind to the infected cells. And when this happens, they are going to result in the destruction of those cells that have been engulfed. That's why we're saying that infected cells, they undergo cell lysis. So this has been what we are talking about being the two main mechanisms. So there is humoral immunity and cellular immunity of adaptive immune system. And this visual aid in this case is demonstrating all what we've been talking about. So we can see on top there's adaptive immune cells. To the left, we've got cell-mediated immunity, meaning we are dealing with the T cells. To the right, we've got the humoral immunity, meaning we are dealing with the B cells. So we're saying that the B cells to the right, they are going to actually differentiate into the plasma cells, making the antibodies. Like which antibodies? We've got the immunoglobulin M, immunoglobulin D, immunoglobulin E, immunoglobulin A, immunoglobulin G. All those are types of antibodies that are going to be found within the blood plasma. And then to the left, we've got the cell-mediated immunity with the T cells that is actually going to produce the cytokines, like we have already mentioned, that are going to be essential in bringing about apoptosis. So we're saying that it induces apoptosis in target cell. This apoptosis, it is just the destruction of the infected cells during the phagocytic mechanism of the T lymphocytes. So this is actually the mechanism of the cells. Friends, thank you very much. This brings us to the end of today's discussion. We've been talking about the lymphocytes. We talked about other cells that are actually essential in immunity. Our topic for today, it was immunology, studying immunity. And we have seen that immunity is actually the biological structure that actually protects the body from foreign invaders. And we talked about two types of immunity, which is innate immune system and adaptive immune system. We talked about two types of adaptive immune system, which is actually natural and artificial. We also went on talking about two mechanisms of adaptive immune system, which is actually the humoral immune system and cellular immune system and their mechanisms. Thank you very much for your time and attention. I guess you've really interested and enjoyed today's lessons. For more understanding, you can review more and more this video. Don't forget to subscribe and like the video. Thank you very much.